ever feel like you just keep hearing the same financial advice over and over and over again? You go to Yahoo Finance and you go to all these different places to get some information on how to do your financial game better. And it seems like you're just kind of hearing the same robotic save more, spend less, all this stuff. And it's frustrating. So let's get into why that happens, because you're right. I go on to Yahoo Finance, different, Forbes, all that stuff, and they all talk about the same thing all the time. They just put a new little wrapper around it. So we're going to talk about why that is, and then we're going to talk about ways that you can actually get some advice to help you actually accomplish your goals. So if that sounds good to you, stick around. That's what we're going to be talking about. For those of you who are new, I'm Lisa Sakai. I've been a financial advisor for over 14 years, and I help people get to financial freedom as quickly as possible. We are in a new location today because I am traveling for my husband's work, and so I'm in a hotel room, so hence the weird background. And I forgot everything. I forgot my wedding ring, and I forgot my earrings, and I forgot everything. So, we're just doing this just as is, and it's okay. We're good. So I figured, why not do a video on the road, But it's interesting because I kind of came up with this idea because I wanted to just get another idea of something to talk about that I thought would be interesting for you all. I went to Yahoo Finance, not to pick on them, and it's just the same stories. It's the same stories that I have read 50 billion times. And I kind of rolled my eyes and I thought, well, if I feel this way, then you guys must feel this way. So essentially, we all hear these kind of greatest hits when it comes to your finances, right? Budgeting, cutting your daily latte. I actually did a whole video on how that's kind of a weird thing to talk about when it comes to your finances. Is it true? Is it not true? I'll make sure I link it down below in the description. But is that really good financial advice? I don't know, but it seems to be everywhere. Invest for the long term. Retirement's important. Timing's important. Make sure you start early and save. You can save less over time. You start early, all that stuff, right? And although they're all important, they feel very repetitive and very oversimplified. And a lot of times they don't really give you any action steps to do anything for yourself. And so, and just FYI, if you're wondering what I'm looking at my notes. So, we're not sitting here for an hour because I could talk to you for an hour about this. But the problem is when these kind of subjects come up and they're on repeat and everybody says the same thing, it's because these concepts are foundational. And a lot of times when you are working with somebody, like when I have a new prospect or I have somebody, these foundational skills are often skipped over. People want to skip to the talking about all the new and shiny, flashy things. And they don't necessarily want to do the foundational work, but the foundational work is important. It's like, we always talk about it like how building a house. If you don't have a good, strong foundation, then really, what are you building your foundation house on? It's going to crumble, right? So if you just jump into, buying some hot new stock, and you don't have an emergency fund, you don't have more diversified investments, you don't have an idea of when you want to retire, you don't have an idea of what your budget's like, it can come tumbling down essentially, because all those things kind of work together, and so it is fundamental principles that people often skip over. And I think, honestly, if I think about this correctly, I think people skip over it because that's all people talk about, right? I mean, this is what you've been hearing about since you were 18 years old. And yet, because it's talked about so much and it's so routine or then essentially it gets ignored a lot. So I think it gets talked about a lot because it gets ignored a lot, because it's being talked about a lot. So it's a circular issue, right? I would say another thing is risk aversion. Now, risk aversion for you guys, not you, not wanting to take risk in the markets or something. I mean risk aversion for the creators, for the people who are writing the articles, for the people who are giving advice here. we do have to kind of do a low risk, broad advice to avoid liability, because obviously I don't know who you are. I haven't, unless you've reached out to me, I don't know your situation. I don't know what you're trying to do. And financial advice is personalized. And, we have certain rules. We have certain entities that we're ruled by if you have investment licenses and things like that. And that's why there's not that many people who actually have investment licenses doing videos and stuff, because if you don't, you take on some liability giving any kind of distinct, very specific advice. And so you are going to keep it broad. And you hear me often say, sometimes, but these very sweeping overview statements. I'm sure that's annoying, right? I don't like that. I like people being very direct and giving me direct advice and that kind of thing, but we have to do that. Also, a lot of times these videos and these articles are trying to target a wide audience. So when you've got a publication or something, they're trying to get a lot of eyes on it. They're trying to get a lot of clicks, a lot of eyes, a lot of shares, all that stuff. And we do that when we're trying to do videos on YouTube and everything. We want a lot of views on things. Well, it's going to be much more generalized and overviewing in a broad audience. My niche audience that I work with are professional women who don't have kids, and whether they're married or not, there's different planning that happens with that. But if I just focus my videos on just those subjects, which is important for sure, it's a very narrow margin. And I also have to think, well, how many people are going on the internet searching for professional women without kids financial planning? Probably not very many. So the idea is, can you have a broader audience and maybe find those people who want to reach out and have conversations with you that are part of your target market? And it's kind of a dance, right, to see that. So, it's very frustrating for you as viewers for this, but this is kind of the behind the scenes thing. So essentially, the reason that I was making this video is, I know, like I said, I was annoyed by what I was finding, honestly, for a search. But also I think that women in particular, and I do work with women, as I just said, a lot, are frustrated by the information that they're getting out there. Because, there's a lack of education that we get. Not just women, but in general, people get it. But for some reason, the men seem to want to share this information with the younger generation. Women don't tend to do this, it just doesn't seem to come about very often. I know I didn't get any kind of education on finance or anything. And, because of that, because we have a little bit of a guilt complex when it comes to women spending money and, should I be saving it? We feel more guilty, whereas men don't have that guilt aspect to it. They know they spend too much, or they know that they are a saver or whatever, but they just don't have that same guilt associated with it. So women kind of secretly are searching for things, where men are just a little bit more out there, that it's not really emotional tie. They don't see it as part of their identity, whereas women kind of do, unfortunately. It's just part of nature. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just part of nature. I think a lot of times women are caregivers for their kids or parents or stuff, so they end up putting their life on hold a lot more in general. 61% of caregivers are women. For older generations, that's from AARP in 2020. I'm sure that's much higher now, actually. And, also the bigger thing is women have a longer life expectancy. So according to the CDC, the average in 2021 was males live to 76.1 years and females live 81.1 years. So that's 5 years more that women live. And so women should be more concerned about finances and longevity planning and that kind of thing. Long-term care can be a big issue, because often if you're married, women traditionally help take care of their husbands when they're sick, and if their husbands pass away, who is there to take care of them? And also the opposite, because we're just different, the genders are different, and that's okay on how we act. But a lot of women I have talked to don't want their husbands being their caregivers. They feel uncomfortable with that because that's just not been their role in their marriage. And so, I feel like maybe the older generations feel like that more than the younger. I don't know if I'd have a problem necessarily with my husband being a caregiver, but I would hope he'd never have to be in that position, of course. But, essentially, I think these issues that come up, women do tend to look for solutions for these problems much more than men do, just because there's more emotion attached to financial uncertainty for women, as I think that's a good thing in many respects, So therefore, the problem is these are very specific things I just talked about, longevity, that all that stuff is very specific. And women in general have told me they get very frustrated with the information that they're getting because it's not specific enough to them. There's no action items. There's no explanation really of why something is the way it is. And that's because of all the reasons I talked about, the broad overview, the, low risk for us as creators on trying to create things that are interesting, but at the same time are relevant to you, that kind of stuff. So hopefully you see that I try to be a little bit more creative here because I understand your frustration. So I would say, how do you kind of combat this, right? How do you go into this and say, okay, I'm going to try to find some financial advice. Maybe you're working with somebody or not, but I would even say if you're working with somebody, you want to make sure that you are still educating yourself outside of it. You don't want to put your eggs all in one basket when it comes to an advisor or something. You want to be able to bring your own perspective, your own questions. It's always better in a world of planning if we're having a two-way conversation versus my just telling you what to do and you're going, okay. I honestly, I don't think that those are the best plans in the world. I want some participation. And so I'd say here's some basics that you can develop for yourself to take some of this generic information and make it better for you and actually help you kind of formulate your planning and formulate your strategy. So the first thing is define your values. And I've said this a million times and I'm going to continue to say it. What do you want? What are your financial priorities? Is it early retirement? Is it traveling? Is it building a business? What are we trying to accomplish? And in what time frame? There's the want and then there's the reality. I always say start with the want because you can do the math and figure out what the reality is, but start with the want, okay? So what are we trying to do? And be very specific. Be very specific about what your goals are. Don't just say, I want to retire and I want to travel. That's great, but then you're doing to yourself what you are upset about. That these articles, this broad overview, this not specific, this, and I think details are the key here. Really figure out what you want, okay? I would say seek out some niche advice. So you might not want to get super niche, right? You might not want to say, female engineers, blah, 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 because you might not find that much information. But you could say financial advice for women, financial advice for women over 50, financial advice for professional women, something like that. You might want to do some more searches on your whatever you use to search on the internet to find some more specific advice that way. And YouTube is a great channel that you can kind of get some more specifics, when you're doing your search. And then personalize your strategies. So this, you might say, well, of course, that's what I'm trying to do. That's why I'm watching this, right? But it's take something that's generic and try to figure out how you can make it work for you. So I always try to give some action steps to people in these videos. I don't want it just to be my bloviating about whatever the subject is. Hopefully it's not. But essentially, what are some common advice things and how do you personalize it? So again, those fundamentals are very important. I think that's a great place to start. Things like emergency fund, taking a look at your insurances and making sure you have the right kind of insurances for you for what you're trying to accomplish, not just life, long-term care, disability, but also, what does your home insurance look like, your car coverage, all of your that kind of stuff. That's really important to making sure you're staying financially fit to continue to push forward on your goals. I would say, doing some financial planning, figuring out what your details are that you in the life that you want to live. What does your budget look like? Are you overspending? Are you saving a lot and it's all going into cash, and is that the right thing? Those are the things that are basics that people roll their eyes about and say, I don't want to talk about an emergency fund, but it's a key. It's a key to figuring out your path forward. Do you have too much cash in your emergency fund? Do you not have enough cash? Because if you don't have enough cash, we start to go into debt if something bad happens. Those kind of things are really important. So I would say looking at those key basic information things, and make sure you've actually done those things for yourself. That's a great place to start. It's annoying, but at the same time, it's the foundation. It's important. And just remember that retirement is about your dreams. It's not a formula. Everybody says, okay, what's the formula to get? There's not really a formula. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish, when you're trying to accomplish it by, knowing that things are flexible. Like I have people who come to me and say, at 67, I want to be retired. And then we get to 67, they're like, maybe a couple more years. Or I get to people, who say, I'm 65, I'm out. And at 62, they're like, get me out of here. Or we've got people who come to me and have started a business and aren't really sure how to handle their finances on that. And it's over. If you're a business owner like I am, business is always changing. It's always a little different. You've always got a different focus every year. And you just want to make sure that you're building your actual flexible dream and having a good focus, but understanding that focus shifts. And it's a moving target. There's no formula that's going to be given to you. So if you're going to financial advice on any platform to get the formula, it doesn't exist. I'm sorry, but it doesn't. And you're gonna always be let down by that. So just to kind of sum up things, I would say educate yourself. Maybe find a community. There's some really good groups on Facebook and LinkedIn and things like that. Although be careful, because people tend to say, well, this is what I do, and everybody goes, oh, okay, I should do that. No, you make sure everything fits within those values we talked about. Build those values, see if it makes sense for those values you've built out. Because you might be in a group and all the women want to retire early, even though that's not your goal and that's not the goal of the group. Maybe don't follow that advice if that's not your goal, that you're building a business to try to sell it and all these people work for corporations. It's a totally different journey, so you want to make sure you understand what path you're on versus the path of the people in any kind of forums that you're listening to. And then connect with other women who are on your financial journey. So, again, everybody's going to be doing their own thing, but if you have a group of friends who have similar type goals as you do, like let's say a goal is to pay off your house, it makes it so much easier and so much more rewarding to celebrate those wins with other women who are doing the same thing, who want the same thing as you, because they get it. And so that does help to have a community like that. And then, don't be afraid to work with a professional. A lot of people say, I don't have enough money, I don't have all that. You can probably find somebody that works for you with where you're at. You just have to do some searching and don't give up, right? And find the right person for you. Don't find somebody that just because your friend told you to use them and you don't like them, don't use them. I mean, that's the honest truth. You go with your gut on stuff. And like I said, you just gotta keep thinking about your values. your foundation, your journey, and filter all that information through there. And be honest if you've actually done the work, or if you're just annoyed that you're reading another article about budgeting because you actually haven't looked at your budget in a while and you have no idea if you're saving money or not. That's a problem. So, what financial advice are you tired of hearing about? And what financial advice are you looking for? And I think that that would be a really good way to start the conversation. So feel free to reach out if you have any comments on that. And until next time, stay strong, have a good one, and we will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.